Here are 10 watches that I cannot live without. And there's a special surprise at the end. I'm going to show you what's inside this watch roll. It has some serious, what I like to call watch. To me, every watch brand has its own gold medal. When it comes to Patek Philippe, to me, it's the 5980 all rose gold on a bracelet. A watch, depending on condition, age, etc., that's going to trade anywhere from $175 to $225 today in the market, still way over its retail value. But to me, the standard, the gold medal, as I like to call it, is always going to be the 5980. It's a little chunkier. The beautiful bracelet with it, again, has all the DNA of the original 3700, as you see here. This, to me, is the gold medal. This one is in rose gold, unlike its predecessor in yellow gold. Sticking with Gerald Genta theme, I'm going to jump right into Audemars Piguet. And Audemars Piguet is near and dear to my heart because it happens to be my favorite brand. Unfortunately, I don't have a 5402 to show you, the one that was designed by Gerald Genta on a napkin overnight back in 1972. But I do have the closest second, and that's going to be its chronograph variation, and that is the 39mm chronograph executed by Audemars Piguet. He has since made this in a 41mm. He has since made this in a 38mm, scaling it down. And to me, the 39mm Royal Oak it's always been that perfect size. It's a perfect size. For my personal wrist, this is a watch I absolutely cannot live without. I love it with a white dial. It's nice and clean. I do like the fact that it's a chronograph function. Of course, 5402 be the first choice from the old. The 39mm to me is honestly the perfect size. Now, we just talked about a gold medal. Well, when it comes to Audemars Piguet, the gold medal to me is going to be their Royal Oak line in the 41mm in rose gold. Again, much like the Nautilus. Notice a pattern here, right? And notice that we're just discussed two of the three of the Holy Trinity, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe. But the gold medal from Audemars Piguet to me is always going to be a Royal Oak chronograph, rose gold on a bracelet. This one happens to be the green dial 50th anniversary, but it's really irrelevant. The original Royal Oak 41mm in rose gold they came out with had a black and a white dial. It's really irrelevant. It's really about the concept of that gold medal. Now, mind you, in my mind, the Royal Oak in general is probably the greatest blank canvas ever created by Mr. Gerald Genta. If we're going to stick with Audemars, I'm a big proponent of Offshore. So for the 20th anniversary in 1992, Audemars Piguet came out with the Royal Oak Offshore. And they started with this particular watch, which is the Beast, right? Yellow gold brick, weighs a pound, extremely heavy. No wonder it got the nickname the Beast. This is one of the original ones back from 1992-93. This one happens to be a tropical dial. I love the neo-vintage feel of it, and I also love the feel of this thing on the wrist, and it can also double as a weapon. And of course, sticking with offshores, I went into Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore limited editions, heavy duty, early in my career, sort of created the market. One of my favorite limited edition offshores, and that is the Michael Schumacher, for many reasons. Number one, aesthetically. Number two, Michael Schumacher himself, one of the greatest Formula One drivers whose career unfortunately was cut short due to an accident he had skiing. All the racing pedigree of that of a Juan Pablo Montoya, which is where the racing watches started, moving into the Schumacher. Just a beautiful, gorgeous watch. And again, greatest blank canvas, as I said, when it comes to Audemars Piguet. And if we're going to talk about the Holy Trinity, we must mention the last name, and that is going to be Vacheron Constantin. Now, Vacheron Constantin makes a slew of beautiful, gorgeous watches, but again, this is about me. This is one I can't live without. Of course, if I'm going to go backwards, it's not going to be the overseas, it's going to be the Vacheron Constantin 222. I happen not to have one here, I apologize, but I'm going to go to the modern Vacheron overseas. Now, the Vacheron overseas, again, sleek lines, very sporty, very reminiscent of a Nautilus, very reminiscent of a Royal Oak. No wonder why I like it. But if I'm going to pick watches I can't live without, I have to have a watch from every single brand that's part of the Holy Trinity, and Vacheron is no exception. Now, when we're talking about stainless steel Vacherons, this comes with a blue dial, white dial. I chose the black dial specifically. Overall, aesthetically, to me, it looks like cleaner. It's very legible with its white markers against the black dial. So to me, certainly something that's saying, certainly a watch I cannot live without. Everybody's gonna say, well, Roman, you're showing somewhat of expensive watches. What, can we come down to earth a little bit? Absolutely, the Rolex Submariner. And mind you, notice I didn't bring the new Submariner. I brought the older Submariner, the one that doesn't have the ceramic bezel. There's something about this era of subs, pre-ceramic subs, that to me screams what Rolex always has been about, and that is a tool watch. Rolex historically has been a tool watch for years upon years before they became that luxury brand, before they became that brand that everybody was going crazy about. Rolex is also a first money watch, at least as of the last 20 years I've been doing this. But why the Submariner and why the older style? Well, I guess it's sentimental in a sense. My very first fancy watch was not a Submariner. It was actually a very cheap Datejust, a 4-digit Datejust that I bought for $1,000. And I was always eyeing the Submariner until I finally was able to actually get one. But the number one reason I'm going with this watch is because this thing is indestructible. When I tell you the Rolex Submariner is indestructible, it is indestructible. I own another Submariner that dates back to the year I was born, 1975. It's a single red sub. I must have bought that watch 15 years ago. I've had it for 15 years. I've never had it serviced. This thing is still ticking. I've taken it to the beach. I went swimming with it. I dropped it a numerous amount of time. This thing is a true tool watch. It is indestructible. And guess what? It's a quick polish away from being brand spanking new, and the service is really not that expensive. Alongside of it, coming down in price a little bit, is the Omega, right? And you would think, obviously, Speedmaster. And I literally went down to the safe and I took the most random Speedmaster I could find because it's irrelevant. Any Speedmaster, to me, is a must-have watch in any collection. And you hear a lot of collectors say that. You hear a lot of collectors going the speedy route. Oddly enough, if you look at people's evolution of a collection, usually it tends to go up. It tends to go up in value overall, and tends to go up in value in watch. You start with a cheaper watch, you go more expensive. The Speedy is the one watch that actually stays in the collection, oddly enough. Because usually what people do is when they upgrade, they get rid of their cheaper watches. And once they find themselves owning a watch that's 100 grand or over 100 grand, like the Nautilus or the Royal Oak, for example, they usually get rid of some of the cheaper watches. It's no longer, it doesn't feel right. But Speedy, people always keep. It's sort of that one watch that they keep in their collection pretty much forever. What sings to me when it comes to Omega? Of course, many things. A lot of historical facts about the company, what it's done, but its affiliation with NASA, number one, number two, the Olympics, and last but not least, James Bond, which I'm a big fan of. This is why a Speedy is an absolute must in my personal collection. We talked about the Holy Trinity. We talked about Rolex. We talked about Omega. Let's talk about something different. Let's talk about the godfather of all watchmaking. And the godfather of all watchmaking, to me, is Mr. Louis Breguet. Now, Breguet, one of the things Breguet has done, and one of the inventions that he has under his belt, among very, very many, we're not going to make this a history lesson on Breguet, is the Tourbillon that everybody knows. The Queen was upset. Her pocket watch was running slow. And Mr. Breguet decided, you know what, I'm going to fix this by inventing the Tourbillon that's going to adjust the mainspring for the effect that gravity has on the movement. So if I'm going to go Breguet, I'm only going to go Tourbillon. In this case, I picked the Messidor Tourbillon. And the reason I picked this one is aesthetics. I mean, this is a gorgeous Tourbillon in platinum, fully skeletonized front and back. The Tourbillon is really outlined extremely well. The cage is 6 o'clock. It has its own ring that outlines the watch, and it's supposed to be about that. A Breguet Tourbillon is supposed to be about the Tourbillon. No frills, no thrills. Attention on the Tourbillon, because that's what this brand is all about. This is one of the best inventions that they ever came out with. And to me, if I'm gonna have a Breguet in my collection, it's going to be a Tourbillon. I'm gonna go to my favorite independent. Now, there are many independents I like. There are many independent brands I like, but I gotta go with my favorite, and that's going to be MB&F, Max Büsser and Friends. Starting with the man himself, Max Büsser. That man has an impressive resume, let's just say. Starting with reviving Jaeger culture, reverse Jaeger, moving on to Harry Winston creating the Opus line, where he brought in independent watchmakers to create all kinds of, for the lack of a better word, crazy watches and horologically inventive watches, right? Starting with the Opus 1 with F. Vacheron, moving on until he got to Opus 5, which was a collaboration with Felix Baumgartner, i.e. now 𝗙𝗏𝗏, which created a brand new brand. And then he moved on to obviously open up his own brand. In my mind, Max Büsser is the Gerald Genta of today's age. And I couldn't pick just one watch, so I ended up going with two, one from both of his lines. He has the Legacy machine and he has the horological machines. From the Legacy machines, I am going with the LM Perpetual. Aesthetically, horologically, this is, again, I can do an entire episode on this. If I'm going a horological machine, I am going with the LM Perpetual. The sequential chronograph is another one he just came out with. I don't have one here, but for now I'm sticking with this until I get enough hands-on time with the sequential chronograph. This guy is all about innovation. This guy is all about pushing horology to its limit. It's about bringing something new to the table, something that hasn't existed. And it's very difficult to do in the world of horology, considering everything has sort of been there, done that. And of course, from the horological machine, I'm going with the HM6, AKA the Space Pirate. And the reason I picked this and the reason I love horological machines versus legacy machines, because horological machines look nothing like watches. They look like something that has never been done before. They look crazy. Market prices on these are not cheap. This thing hovers around its retail price, which is around $175,000, where this is actually over its retail value because these are long sold out at about $175,000. market price. This was a quick run through of these watches, and I did promise you something special. And to no surprise in this case, I am going to have 3 watches from the Holy Trinity, so more on the brands that I showed you. But for me, having the ability to put on pretty much any watch that I want, flex is also important. I've said this numerous times. Flex is a big part of these expensive toys, much like when you buy an expensive car, buy yourself a big house. Again, in the back of your head, you're thinking, okay, what will others see or say when they see this, right? But in my mind, my flex has always been the same. It's always been the horological flex. So I always go with the most complicated. I'm gonna start with Vacheron from the Holy Trinity. And I actually chose a newer version of the skeleton tourbillon in rose gold. It's sort of like that gold medal from Vacheron, but a little bit of extra. The skeleton tourbillon is absolutely amazing. This watch trades on the market around $230,000, which is over its retail price of around $200,000. And again, it sort of has the best of both worlds. It's the gold medal from Vacheron Constantin, much like I would choose a plain overseas in rose gold with a blue dial probably. But this is a flex because this is a tourbillon, one of the most complicated complications out there. It's also a skeleton. And again, not very many made, so you're not gonna see another guy wearing one of these. Next, I am going to go to Patek Philippe. And when I pull this watch out, it doesn't seem like, oh my God, Roman, that's not a big flex. You know, from afar, it doesn't look like a whole lot, but what this is a 5074J. What this is a 5074J. It's a yellow, gold, black dial, but what this is a minute repeater perpetual calendar automatic from Patek Philippe, featuring their micro rotor automatic movement. And you would say, well, Roman, from far, it doesn't look like much. Actually, it reminds me of a 5070 chronograph from afar. Well, it's not. It's for those that know, and to me, this is a huge flex. First of all, again, size. This is one of very, very few Patek Philippe watches that carry a size such as this in a dressy configuration. Number 2, this has the DNA of the 5070 chronograph. Number 3, it was one of the first grand complication minute repeater perpetuals that Patek came out with. He had started with the 5013, 5078, but this particular watch is the predecessor to the 3074 minute repeater perpetual. It's just bigger, and this is why I personally like it. And guess what? I've walked into many rooms wearing a watch this or a watch like this. 9 out of 10 people didn't recognize, but for those that did, boy, did that start a hell of a conversation. And of course, I'm gonna finish this off with my favorite brand, and that is Audemars Piguet, as I mentioned earlier. And the flex with Audemars Piguet is the fact that when the brand was first started, they didn't start making time-only watches as most companies do and then evolve into more complicated things. They started making complicated movements for Tiffany & Co. for their pocket watches, perpetual calendars, and things of that sort. So they came out of the gate making complicated stuff, so no wonder what I went with is the most complicated watch that they make, and that is the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Grand Comp. And the Grand Comp consists of perpetual calendar, a chronograph, not just a chronograph, but a split-second chronograph, as well as a minute repeater, all in a white gold case, a behemoth of a case in typical fashion from Audemars Piguet. And notice I didn't say Offshore, I said Royal Oak. You would say, Roman, this is so huge. No, this is still classified as a Royal Oak by Audemars Piguet. Of course, the one I picked out has even more of a oomph to it. And the reason for that is because this is a piece unique. This is called Pride of Argentina, made for Argentina, obviously. It's a one-off, it's a one of a kind. When I put this watch on, there's no other person in the world that has one, will ever have one. And to be fair, in comparison to some of the other Grand Comps that Audemars Piguet has come out to in this case, in the Royal Oak case, as far as the color scheme is concerned, the blue with the rose gold markers on the blue strap, hornback strap, to me, is absolutely perfect. This had to be one of the hardest videos I had to do. And the reason for that, because if I had free reign, I'd probably bring another 30 watches out here, because truth be told, I just can't live without a watch. And I have certain preferences, and these are the preferences I share with you today. These are gonna be my top. Got any questions, comment them below. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe. Do all those wonderful things that you do to help this channel grow, and I'll see you on the next one.